Good morning. It is just so exciting to see such an overflow crowd here today. Welcome to LL2, Indigenous-led conservation in North America. I want to get the microphone right. So AB, tell me when I've got it where you want it. We're being recorded and broadcast, so speak distinctly and clearly when you ask a question. All right, so it is really especially exciting for me to be able to moderate this panel. We have 4 distinguished Indigenous leaders in Canada and in the United States here to talk with us today about their initiatives. 2 of them you will actually see again tonight when we present our Conservation Visionary Awards. But if I had 4 awards to give away, I would give them away to these 4 people. They are each remarkable in their own right, and I will, without further ado, introduce someone who I think I can call my friend, even though I've only known her for a year and mostly talked to her over the telephone. But Chief Ann Richardson of the Rappahannock tribe in Virginia is the 4th consecutive generation of her family to lead the Rappahannock tribe, the people who live where the water rises and falls. She is one of several entities to be officially recognized in Virginia as a tribal entity, a tribal nation. This is something that Chief Ann was the leader in achieving. It is a major achievement for a tribal nation to be so designated by the United States Congress. And I know for a fact from Tim Kaine, who is the senator from Virginia in the United States Congress, that Chief Ann was indispensable in that process. Chief Ann also led the fight, the effort, the collaboration to bring her people back to land which they have been separated from for 350 years. So this perseverance is necessarily multi-generational. She took her cue from her father and her grandfather, and I believe your great uncle. She is a very clever organizer, and she knows how to talk to people on the street and people in very high positions of power. She's going to talk today about the effort to bring her people in its return to the river. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Ann Richardson.
Thank you, Jim. Wengapo, which means greetings in Powhatan. You may not know who Powhatan is, but you probably know Pocahontas, right? That was his daughter. So I'm one of 7 tribes in Virginia that were a part of the Powhatan Confederacy in 1607 when Captain John Smith and Christopher Newport came to Jamestown. And so I'm a descendant of those people from the Rappahannock tribe. And as Jim said, I'm a 4th generation chief in my family from Virginia. And so you're going to see my slides start to roll, and that's just general extra information of what I'm going to give you when I'm standing here.
And I'm not sure they're still animated, so you may have to ask the AV guys to advance them over time, or use the clicker.
Okay. There it is. So the return to the river is something that started a long time ago. what we really had were issues where we were going traditionally to certain places in my whole entire lifetime, to fish, to hunt, to gather foods and medicines on the river. But because of the disconnection and the divestiture of our land from around 1650, we didn't understand where these towns were located. Only in 2016 did I connect with an archaeologist that started to do by GIS mapping the towns that were historic to our tribe, only to find that these were the places that we were going to in my childhood, the very same places. So we're located here in Eastern Virginia on the Rappahannock River, and we had crown treaties. Someone else in the room who had crown treaties with England prior to the establishment of the United States government in 1677. And in that crown treaty, it delegated or it appropriated reservation areas for each of the tribes. We started to get information about our local historic towns, Matchapeak, Pissacoack, and Wecoupam. It's where we first met Captain John Smith when he came into our river in 1608. And so that piece of property is a 4-mile stretch of pristine, untouched, mostly forest, and 100-foot cliffs on the riverbank. It was a place that we could look down from both ends and see whether we had friends or foes coming to our towns. We met Smith there and volleyed arrows at him to get him out of our river. And so this place had all of a sudden become a place that attracted developers because it was undeveloped. On the river, in these high cliffs that had great view sheds from the riverbank. So the county, the local county, approved this big housing development, on one side, then a big resort on another piece of this property, and we began to fight to protect this property. And so the coalition of landowners, NGOs, and federal agencies that wanted to help us, we all started to come together and work to protect this. In 2022, we raised $4 million to buy the first phase of this, which was Pissacoack. Right now, we are in the process of closing on Matchapeak, which is a 969-acre parcel that the tribe is going to protect with conservation easements through U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We have another phase 3. It's a 703-acre parcel that we are working on that we will close on in 25. We've raised all but about 400 and some thousand on parcel 3 and about 300 and some thousand on parcel 2. The 969 acres that we are getting ready to close on, we have raised a little under the 8.8 million price tag on that. The other one is 4 million, and so we have all but about 400,000 on that one, 350, something like that. And all of these will be protected areas, but it's returning my tribe to those areas. And so now we're looking at cutouts on the 1,000 acres, and the tribes in Virginia. We also established something called the Indigenous Conservation Council of the Chesapeake Bay with my leadership, which opened it up to all of the Powhatan tribes and started to educate the leaders on ways that we could get land back for the tribes to have for usage and protect them for future generations. And so we've done a lot of that work, and that is a lot of legal work around the Crown treaties that were guaranteed, as well as changing policy in Virginia to actually allow the tribes to be eligible for state funding through the Land and Water Conservation Fund to purchase land back for tribes. That was done in 22, 23, and then in 24, I started really advocating for the land and water conservation at the federal level, which every year revenue is taken from all the natural resources at like $90 billion a year for that fund that goes out to all the states. But there was only 3% of it that went to tribes. And so I began to advocate at the Secretary's office, at the White House, for tribes to be able to have more of this money, because the revenue that goes into it comes out of tribal natural resources, right? So why are tribes not eligible for this funding? So I've been advocating at that level as well. As the eagles fly, the eagles were an endangered species for a long time, and now they have come back to the cliffs, we call it, and it is now been designated by the Audubon Society as the eagle nesting ground of North America. So they come there and breed and fly out. It is also the tundra swan. It's so many different species of fowl that come into this place to propagate. And then you see our bobcat there peeping around the corner. And so it's really a diverse ecosystem that encompasses the animals and the wildlife that make this place so beautiful and pristine, and it makes it balanced. Now we're fighting data centers. So Virginia has more data centers than any place on the planet. Isn't that sad? Because Virginia is not a very big place. So it all started to culminate around Washington and the suburban areas around Washington for the need for this data storage that's become enormous. They're going out now in the western part of the state over toward the mountains, toward West Virginia. And so we are now fighting that. And I'm using my Crown Treaty to fight that. Because in the Crown Treaty, it designates a 3-mile buffer zone around all tribal lands, and my tribal lands are now back on the river. So I'm hoping that we will be able to use the provisions in the Crown Treaty to protect that river. There were guarantees that we are going to always have what we need in that river. And so as a part of that, to protect the tribe, we have designated in our tribal constitution, it's just passed, and we did press releases in the last couple of days, that we have declared the river our mother, which we consider her in our religious philosophies. She is the mother that provides sustenance from her breast to us as her children. And in that, we have a Bill of Rights for our tribal citizens. And so in that Bill of Rights, she has the right to be well and to be sustained and to be clean and to flow openly. And so we're hoping that in tribal courts, if there is a challenge to that, tribal courts can acknowledge and recognize her as a citizen, which gives us a larger, a more prevalent legal standing than we might have just relying on the provisions of the Crown Treaty. So we're hoping that together that will protect our river from 13.9 million gallons a day withdrawal from our river, which will completely change the ecosystem. The famous Rappahannock oysters that are shipped all over the world among other things. We have sturgeon that are protected species in the Rappahannock, and lots of other things that, the river herring that are a part of our traditional sustenance that we gather and harvest every year. All of that would completely change. And so we're fighting for this right now for our survival and for the survival of our river. And what developers who want to come into these beautiful, pristine areas that nobody, we farm there. We do seafood harvesting and seafood business there, but primarily development is few and far between. We have little tiny towns around, but that's about it. And they're little hamlets where, those families that have always done seafood and always done farming, that's kind of been the way that they have lived for, 350 years. Now with the data centers coming in and wanting to capture those resources, they are up in arms as well and have joined our coalition to fight for this. So they're depending on me to come up with the legal way to protect the river, but they are supporting us through financing and attorneys and whatever it is that they can contribute to it. So I'm saying this to you because there are many avenues out there that we can use to protect places, but we just have to put our heads together and come up with the strategies. And it reminds me of what, I think it was Sitting Bull that said, let us come together, put our minds together and see what we can make for our children. It's really important that in this time in history, not only in North America, but all over the world, that people are coming together to protect the planet, to protect clean water, because we have to have those things to live. Otherwise, we don't exist anymore. And we want to continue to live on this beautiful planet that the Creator has given us. And so it's important that we come together and strategize. Even the areas I was listening this morning to more about what Canada has in the provisions of tribal law. And it's different than U.S. law for Indian law in the U.S. And so we have to come together and really strategize. And hopefully some of the things that I'm telling you today can help you to strategize here, as well as other places in the world. We all had treaties around the globe. Primarily the British Empire, the sun never set on the British Empire. It conquered so much of the world. And so now we can use those provisions to help protect those lands and resources that were taken away from us. And it's an exciting time for the tribes. It's an exciting time for conservationists because we can come together in partnership the way I believe the Creator wanted us to be in the beginning. And so I thank you for listening to me today, and I hope that something that I have said in my presentation will help you. Thank you.
All right. It is now a great honor for me to introduce to you Grand Chief Mandy Galmasti of Ewe-Ishchi, which is the traditional homeland of the Cree Nation, primarily in the nation of Quebec, or the province of Quebec, however you choose to call it. Mandy is a member of the Cree First Nation of Was-Wanape. She is the second woman elected Deputy Grand Chief and the first woman to be elected Grand Chief of the Cree Nation. That is the 11 communities, each of which has a chief of its own, that come together to form the Cree Nation in Quebec. Mandy successfully pursued her educational path, including a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and another in Public Affairs and Policy Study at Concordia University in their School of Community and Public Affairs. In addition, she has 12 years of experience in administration and management, working for various Cree entities. She was first elected to public office in 2014 and then elected again as Grand Chief, I believe, in 2021, 2017, 2021. Mandy, I'm not going to read from this anymore. Mandy has led the Cree Nation into a series of agreements with the province of Quebec and the government of Canada, which is an achievement that's of national significance. The territory of EU-Ishchi is about 40 million hectares. That's about 100 million acres. That's an area for other North Americans in the audience that's about as large as all of New England plus New York State plus half of Pennsylvania. That's a very large area of land in the north. And as Mandy will tell you, Grand Chief Gomasti will tell you, they have a strategy which they've implemented with the help of a lot of different allies, including the Nature Conservancy of Canada, that is progressively preserving this land for the people. EU-Ishchi means the people's land, that is the Cree people's land. And she has succeeded in expanding this conservation area terrestrially and is about to succeed in expanding this protected area in marine areas as well. So with that, Grand Chief Mandy Gomasti.
Grawajag. Nistam gino yaman, nui naskamaw chemendo ji miguik mine begejisrat ji miei moik edaikot nahau. Nest kan we wajamaut mshenji di yojga bet stuksndo nahau eji netskado do nahau uyo tishimo eji wijabit chimdo do. If you're not fluent in Cree, I said, let us be thankful for having another day, to be blessed to be together, to learn from one another. And I would also like to acknowledge this territory as a meeting point of many Indigenous nations who have come together in the past to trade, to connect, to work together, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd like to also acknowledge and thank my co-panelists for being here today, for each of us to have the opportunity to share the story of the work that we do for our nation. It is my pleasure today to share the story of the Cree Nation. I am the Grand Chief of the Cree Nation, but I am really more of the servant of the people who have come together, who have worked on this file. The work of the Cree Nation has been long enduring. It has been successful because of consistency. I want to first acknowledge one of the key players who has been pushing this file, Chantal Tetreault, who is here, our CNG staff member who has driven this protected areas file. Not only my longtime colleague, but my very longtime friend. We were just reflecting, it's almost 30 years of friendship. We met in the hallways of a college, and we actually started as summer students at this organization, and now we are pushing very important files. J'aimerais aussi dire bonjour et salut à notre grand partenariat Québec pour tous les efforts que nous avons faits ensemble avec tous les dossiers pour la conservation et la protection de la territoire. And I would, of course, like to thank all of the critical partners, especially NCC, who have contributed to the continuous success of this file. Our other Christy McDonald, who's really been a key partner for us. I want to thank you, Christy, for your work that you've done in supporting us. You are such a cornerstone. The history that you've had in this file is really important to us. So I want to thank you publicly and acknowledge you. The work that we've been doing at here in USG is a little bit different. We are not a treaty nation, we are a modern lands claim nation. So how this differentiates us is 1975, we started in, I guess, a very challenging position where Quebec announced the project of the century in our territory, which was a huge hydroelectric development. For us, it was a challenge because we did fight. We did fight this project. And I don't think it's very well known that when this project was announced, we were not consulted. And we challenged Quebec. We were one of the first Indigenous nations to challenge a provincial government for recognition of our rights. If you want to know more about the history of this project and the history of the JBNQA, I do encourage you to go to our website. We will next year be celebrating the 50th anniversary of our modern lands claim and our partnership with Quebec. It has been a long history. It has been sometimes bumpy, but it has had its really positive moments. And these are one of the files that we really consider a success in having partnership with a provincial government. So for us, we did go through a court process. We challenged Quebec. In the end, the outcome was that we would reach an agreement that would identify the rights and responsibilities of the Cree to live and steward the area, as well as work in partnership with Quebec in different processes that come into our territory, such as development. But one of the key ones for us is really conservation and protected areas. So I'm proud of that history. I am the 5th or 6th Grand Chief. I am the first woman that is elected. So it has been a challenge to follow 5 men who were really big figures in the Canadian landscape, but it's really a pleasure to work for my nation in the same capacity that they did. So some of the things that I want to share is, yes, we do have a very large territory. We often compare it to a small European country. My members continue to hunt, fish, and trap. They live a traditional lifestyle. I come from a household where the majority of our diet is traditional meat. We just came from the moose break season. So this is something that is very important and passionate to our members. It is an important point for you to understand that we are active in Cree way of life. Iwitun is what shapes the direction that we take in our decision making. Yes, we work with our treaty, but our primary focus is to protect our identity, our cultural activities, and of course, our language, and ensuring that it is continuous in the learning cycle for our young members. We're a young nation. We have 9 communities. We have a 10th that's in the process of trying to be established. We also recognize our members that live outside of the territory. So we have a group of individuals that live just across the Quebec border in Ontario. So we do recognize them as well. We have 18,000 members, 51% of them very young, under the age of 18. So we're doing a lot of planning on how to meet their needs. We're a growing nation. I think it's really important for people to understand that when we did sign the JBNQA, it required an implementation process. This implementation process was a challenging role, but it allowed for us to work with, modify, add on to the agreement. We've signed a number of other agreements with Quebec and also with Canada that allow us to have the responsibility to implement a lot of the services in our territory. So we do have our own school board, we have our own healthcare services. They are provided to individuals in their language of choice. Cree is the primary function. I'm very proud to say that this year our health board launched an initiative for a midwifery program where our babies are being born in territory, not in a medical setting, which is very important. As an Indigenous mother, I'm proud to know that our youngest ones are being introduced into the territory from the moment of their birth. So if you're interested, these are all public agreements. You can go online and look at them. They do give us a lot of responsibility in different projects and different services. We are a territory that is impacted by development. This is one of the components in our relationship with Quebec. We have active forestry, we have active mining, we have hydroelectric development. We are trying to find a sustainable balance between development and protection. And we have put a lot of work into the protection side of this story. It is 20 years that we have been working on this process, continuing to build, continuing to develop. And I think what's really important for people to understand here is for us to have success in that, we really had to establish what our goals were. And looking back at some of the components that other nations have used to ensure protection of their territories, we had to highlight things that were of importance to us too. We recognize different mechanisms such as UNDRIP. We work with our territory. We also look at what it is our province is identifying. So Plan Nord, their strategies for trying to protect and conserve within the province, as well as international markers that our partners are looking to try to attain. We are contributing to that as well. So protection is, for us, our first primary factor is to ensure that Cree way of life is sustained, but we also work in collaboration with other levels of government, and we are trying to assist them and contribute to the markers that they are trying to achieve as part of the international community. For us, when we embarked in conservation, we started by launching a strategy. And this strategy really looked at who we were culturally, our identity, what were our needs in the Cree landscape of USG, ensuring that wildlife protected areas were really, kept in a pristine condition, that we're able to continue to hunt, fish, trap, gather medicines, gather, other food sources that we have in the territory, such as berries, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a woman, so berries are very important to me. But really, one of the common threads that I think you will hear in everybody's presentation today is really water. For us, water is a life-giving source. As a woman, we are water carriers. We protect life through water. We wanted to ensure that the abundance of water in USG is protected as part of our conservation efforts. And it was kind of an interesting exercise because we really proposed something unique to Quebec, and that was trying to establish a model that took the importance and significance of cultural knowledge, cultural information that has been built on a millennia of interaction as frontline eyes in the territory, and merging it with Western science. So when we came into partnership with Quebec to really establish these protected areas, they had a lot of targets for biodiversity. We had our own targets, which included biodiversity, but we're really focused on water and cultural components. And this is something that I think was a bit of a challenge. I've never really seen this kind of model being exercised or created. So it was really through the efforts of our staff, through the efforts of our partners, that we were able to create something that was unique, very significant, and in the end, I think was really successful for both of the parties that came together. And the collaboration in pursuing this process is what allowed for us to be here to tell this story of protected areas and conservation in USG. As I mentioned earlier, water flow was really the basis. So looking at watersheds, looking at headwaters, ensuring that we're able to look at the connectivity of what water offers in the territory was very important to us. On Quebec's side, looking at different waterscapes, looking at different water types was a common factor. So I think doing this exercise was one that was interesting, was one that was a challenge, but allowed for us to not only build on the Western science of looking at water and water sources, but incorporating our use of water, how we traveled on water, how water sustains our territory, sustains wildlife, sustains fish habitats, et cetera, et cetera. And for us, looking at the Western science, we were really, very thankful for the relationships that we had because they did a lot of modeling for us. They developed, this modeling with different criteria that looked at all of the water sources, the impact on the territory, the development on the territory, a lot of technical stuff that I didn't invest my time into understanding because it was way beyond my realm of scientific expertise, but I think really allowed for us to create something that was based very heavily in understanding what the landscape looked like and what the future projections of that landscape would look like. So we looked at different criteria. We looked at forests, we looked at geology, water sources. We did projections into the future on what the potential impacts of climate could be. We really, layered many levels of Western science into this model, and we inputted all of these factors into this model that kind of spat out to us many different scenarios. We didn't, 5 minutes, okay. We didn't only look at Western science, but we consulted with our members and asked them, areas of cultural significance, traditional trails, areas where we had cultural legends, etc., areas where they hunted. We incorporated these two types of information together, and we brought to the communities different options on protected areas that they could choose. So it was a very involved process. We went back to the communities over a number of years, asked our members what it is they wanted to protect. At times, it was very challenging because when you wanted to ask communities, what do you want to protect, they really circled their entire territory. And we had to explain to them, well, we were really trying to refine a critical area, create connectivity throughout USG. So this was an exercise in itself that was very challenging, but I'm really proud of the work that was done by the staff, by the land users, by the tallyman, who gave us the traditional knowledge that was really for us a foundational cornerstone in identifying areas of importance. So this is our map of protected areas. I'm very proud of the multiple stages of information that we've developed. We did 20% of protection of our territory. Now we're moving on to the 30%. And for us, this is the next step in our endeavors to protect half of our territory, is to really identify that 30% and what that conservation will mean and how we will finance that conservation. These areas are not areas that are set aside. These are living areas that we want to continue to interact with, that we want other people to understand how Cree Nation and USG's members live with these protected areas, and opening them up to people to come to USG and learn about conservation and the impacts that it's having on an international scale. Some of our conservation strategies and objectives, I think they're here for you guys to review, but we really wanted to stress these important components, ensuring that it was a level of recognized protection, really pushing for the mitigation of climate. We are seeing the impact in our territory. We want to ensure that it is factored into this process. Making those opportunities for these landscapes to be living landscapes, for them to have interaction, for tourism opportunities to be created, and as well for us to ensure having that continued food security, being able to hunt, fish, and trap, and maintaining that balance in these areas is really important to us. We do use the entirety of the Cree Nation's territory, and that's really important. So for us, these are all of the mechanisms that we use. There are many different categories. This is more of like a technical slide, but if you wish to refer to it and really understand the different levels of protection that we're pursuing, I think it's going to be really a beautiful, multifaceted landscape that's going to allow to have different levels of responsibility, different levels of interaction, and of course, different levels of showcasing the success and the progressiveness that an Indigenous nation and provincial government have pursued together. For us, of course, this costs money to undertake the activities in these territories. Primarily, we are seeking to ensure that management of these areas is hosted by our nation. We believe that we have the capacity to do so. We have the capacity to tell that story, of course, in partnership with the provincial government, but we really want to take the lead and showcase what it is an Indigenous nation can share when looking at a living landscape. We are continuing to work on developing how we can pursue financing of these projects, trying to be also a group that is going to come up with new mechanisms in creating finance opportunities for outside groups to come and invest in these spaces, and looking at carbon and looking at how we can classify activities, cultural activities that we believe mitigate emissions in the territory. So it is something that is fairly new. I'm here if you are a finance person and if you are looking for information or opportunity to see how you can kind of invest in a project that is really doing a lot, not only in Quebec, not only in Canada, but we believe is an international contribution because of the size and scope of this project. We are here to talk, and we're looking for partnership, continued partnership. I think our partners can vouch for us and the success that we've had. In this slide, I really want to share, the importance of what we've done here. It is the first time that I have seen an Indigenous-led project of this size, of this scope. We've used our agreements, we've used our capacity to ensure that we're really protecting the territory in a very unique way. We have incorporated the traditional knowledge of our territory over millennia, and we've reflected that in how we have set these areas aside. We have a lot of strategic partnerships with many different NGOs, with many different groups across Canada, internationally as well, that work with us. I'm really pleased to see many of our funders who have helped us with this project in the room today. Long-term planning, and of course, the important thing is stacking the different types of protection that we have put into place and the different types of programs and projects that we want to run in these protected areas. We have to remember that conservation is for continuity. Conservation is to reflect on the pristine state of nature. But conservation is a living activity. These landscapes cannot be set aside and looked at. They have to be engaged in. They have to be in a partnership with us as well, because USG is a living space. We want to ensure that we are respecting and protecting that relationship for its longevity. And this is my last slide. Thank you. Merci.
I think you're observing historic things that are happening. Our next guest is Jimmy Ulikatalik. I hope, Jimmy, that I got your name just right. He is the project manager of the Avictuk Inuit Protected Area in Nunavut, Canada. He is also the manager of the Toloyo Oak Hunters and Trappers Association. This Inuit Protected and Conserved Area, or IPCA, is a proposed 90,000 square kilometers of marine, terrestrial, and fresh water ecosystems in Nunavut. For those of you who are not Canadian, this is in the far north of Canada. Jimmy also represented Nunavut at COP26, the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow. It's my great honor to present him. Jimmy.
Kunimik, tunga tamang akong nakama, kaya lunga to umamnik nalang niya kafi. I'm just saying thank you very much for being here and listening to my story. Yeah, Akbektok means where the sun set, but without disappearing in the horizon, it rises back. And that's usually during the spring and summer, that's the name of our protected area. Right now it's known as Boothia Peninsula, but in my native tongue is Akbektok. Tulrock is right in the center of Canada, I feel. And that's where I was born and raised, in Tulrock. Back in 1972, they were trying to propose a pipeline from Little Cornwallis Island, north of Boothia, through Boothia, down to Baker Lake, and down to Alberta. Back in 1972, the elders backed and said, there's no way we're going to build a pipeline, because at that time, and we are still today, we are one ecosystem with the wildlife and the environment, and therefore back then they felt like, you know, the reason why we're protecting Akbektok is it looks big on a map, but the elders say it's too small to have any other activity. And it's unique because there's ocean on both sides of the peninsula, like all around. And as you may know, the Northwest Passage, to us, that's a corridor for our marine mammals and polar bear. So I'm gonna show a little video, 5-minute video, and continue. We've been here 10,000 years. We know the land, we know the animal. We want to continue to be out on the land, Puthia and Arvicto. We feel we are one ecosystem with the environment, the wildlife, and we want to keep it that way. Polar bear, wolf, muskox, caribou, foxes, all kinds of birds. Those are all the things we want to protect. Dirt Rock is the most northerly community based on North America's mainland. North from here are only islands, sea, and ice. We have about 1,100 people living here, 220 houses, and 220 jobs. The whole Boothia Peninsula was a hunting area for the people that live around here.
1945 inulak haktunga. Tefsaman kan nauluta ayawaksala ko taktagut angunahung nakamig halukyo nakamig natchakyo nakamig. Okay, good upingakul.
Country food, something that is given to us right from birth. A lot of the elders need country food. We have very limited jobs, so everybody has no means of going on the land with ATVs or snowmobiles. You know, because we cannot go hunting, we have to buy the food that we have that is brought from down south to the stores. That everything is shipped and costs a lot of money. Those are not our natural diet, so therefore they cause a lot of diabetes. We become more health issue every year. Because we want our country food to be plentiful for years to come. Also because we want able to be access to country food, we have to protect our territory, and that's our goal. Since 1972, I think they've been trying to protect Arvictoc, Boothia Peninsula. On a map, on paper, it looks big, and the reason why we are protecting it, the members say it's very narrow. It's too small. It's so important because it's a calving ground for caribou. The community doesn't want any mining. They want the caribou to be healthy, the wildlife to be healthy, the environment to be clean the way it is. We want to create Arvictoc in a protected and conserved area. Our plan is to protect 45,039 square kilometers of land, which represent about 0.4 of Canada's mainland. We also want to protect 40,730 square kilometers of marine area and 4,413 square kilometers of freshwater habitat. We will be hiring guardians to be the eyes and ears for our community. They will also collect observations about Arvictoc and our wildlife, and also harvest country food for their community. As a result of Arvictoc protected area, we will be able to create our own local economy based on country food. Likikakut is it's a cut and wrap facility we're trying to open for the people to be able to access country food. Nakikakut will hire local hunters to supply the cut and wrap facility with country food. And we will have local men, women, and youth to operate the facility. We will process country food that is ready to eat, like ground meat, steak, ribs, and filleted fish. We're going to sell to the community at a reasonable price. We need to save our culture, to save the land. We want to reduce poverty, get more healthier, and more people to get income. There's going to be at least 10 to 20 more jobs created once we have the cut and wrap facility. Also, 10 more jobs throughout the protection of Autochtones. Economic. In order to protect Autochtones, to create IPCA, we want to protect the area from mining industry, gas industry, and all winter roads. That's our goal for protection of Autochtones. Even though we're Inuit, we don't have access to country food because lack of hunting tools, ATVs, snowmobiles. These cost money, and when they're shipped up north, they're very expensive. And with people with no jobs, it's pretty hard to get able to go out on the land. And the reason we want to increase the food security is right now, for example, let's say a cousin has a snowmobile, but the other cousin doesn't have any. So he asks his cousin if he could borrow his snowmobile to go hunting. And he says yes, so he's got a very small window to go hunting. To me, that's random hunting. We want to stop the random hunting to increase the food security once we get a cut and wrap facility. This way, people will have access, the elders and the people with low income will have access to country food. We want to continue. We started 2018. Well, in 2019, we started monitoring wildlife. We set up trail cams, sonars to record all the traffic, and the Northwest Passage, like I said before, is a corridor to us for the wildlife, and we want to eliminate as much traffic as we can for the wildlife to roam freely. Yeah, as Inuit, we've been here 10,000 years. There's so much we could offer. We know the land. We know that there's so many nice things that we could offer, like sleeping under northern lights, stuff like that. There's so much beauty that we want to offer to an Inuit value. Inuit value is traditional. You give without asking anything back. It's always you give what you can, it will return on its own. That's our Inuit value. So we want to continue to keep that value. That since we have plenty of muskox right now and plenty of char, we want the cut and wrap facility to be open for generations to come. We're going to sell to the neighboring communities muskox and chars, because there's plenty of them, to keep the cut and wrap facility going for generations. And also any revenue we make, We want to bring it back to the community to make do youth and elders camp, young women doing sealskin and stuff like that, our traditional lifestyle. Yeah, these are the guardians that we hired. The one in the middle is a youth guardian. We have 5 senior guardians and 6 youth guardians that we hire. Then the youth go with the senior men to learn after the seniors, and they're going to continue to keep going once the seniors retire. We collect. The first thing we want to do is to get a baseline, because we know it's pristine the way it is right now. So we wanted that baseline data collected right now before any other activity is done. If any other activities being there, we'll have that baseline and say, look, we want it back to be that pristine. We want to shipping and beluga monitoring through hydrophones. We just deployed hydrophones this summer. The Guardians went up there and deployed some like all the stuff we're doing. We want to use the data to have a management in place for wildlife and environment for the generations to come, so that we don't overharvest and the land is pristine the way it is right now. The Guardians go like patrolling, and they're the eyes and ears of our community. So they do a lot of sampling on both sides of the ocean, on the floor of the ocean, and we're collecting all this data. These are some of the trail camp pictures. Nikikakut means our food, for our food. We want to open a Kananura facility because we don't have access to country food the way we want to. It's very expensive now to go out on the land. Back in the colonial days, when they slaughtered our dock team, that's when we pretty much lost our culture, you know. And in those colonial days, our government was made up of RCMP, priests, either Catholic or Anglican, and a Hudson Bay manager. So we really lost our culture back then. So, you know, having said that, we have an opportunity to get our culture back through Western science, collecting data and being able to have steaks and caribou steaks, muskox, stuff like that, and fillet fish, what they're used to today buying in the store. Okay. Yeah, these are some of the things we had we do caribou workshops with our neighboring community to make sure we continue to protect the caribou, not only in Autochtones, but the neighboring communities as well. And we'll go regional more and more as we go along. We're planning to work with Johaven and Kuaruk, the neighboring communities, to for marine protected to create the jobs that we want to be the trailblazers of marine protected area, and we're asking Johaven and Kuaruk to we got their support, and they want to do the same thing. Their HDOs want to do the same thing as we are doing to protect their territory. You know, we created websites and branding. Our web talk is we have the rock is famous for our country, so we're using that as our vector project. And again, Nrikakut is for the Kaduna facility. Yeah, thank you very much for listening to my story. As you know, like I said, we have about 1,100 people, 200 houses, 250 jobs. So in any way we could get help on funding for our project to go on, because I know it's there already, the people are there to listen and they want to go ahead with the Kaduna facility. But again, we're in the kind of funding is always scarce. So in any way we could get help for funding, I know these people will take care of themselves. Thank you very much for listening.
I'm going to bring it home, literally. Our next guest is Richard Gravel. Richard currently serves as the coordinator of a protected area that I'm going to let you pronounce because I don't. I'll do it. Okay, all right. Which is part of the Huron-Wendat territory. It's that land that we are privileged to be on right now. He serves within the Council of the Huron-Wendat Nation and previously served as a wildlife biologist on various projects in the Canadian North, notably related to migratory forest birds in the Northwest Territory. Richard holds a master's degree in research in wildlife and habitat management, studying dispersal movements among the Arctic fox. For about 10 years, the Huron-Wendat Nation has been trying to make Yenenhonde one of the rare protected area projects in southern Quebec. This protected area, which in Wendat means where medicinal plants are picked, would cover more than 850 square kilometers, or about 210,000 acres, including about 340 square kilometers of virgin forest. Richard, thank you so much for coming.
OK. So, Kweweti, bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Richard, je suis biologiste et je travaille pour le Conseil des Nations Huron-Wendat à titre de coordinateur pour leur protéger Yenenhonde. So, hi everyone. So, I'm francophone, so I may butcher some words along my presentation, but hopefully you understand me well. So, first of all, I wanted to say that I feel really humble about presenting on this panel alongside you. It was really inspiring hearing your stories. And thank you also for the organization to create this space where we can share stories, listen, and learn. I think it's particularly important when it's stories that are Indigenous-led project. It's important to give them space in the conservation network. So I jumped in the project of Yenenhonde quite recently, and what struck me the most was the amount of determination and heart that the people involved in this project had to pull off in order to carry this project along the years. So today I'll share you some insights about the history of this project. So to give some context, we are currently on the Nyoensio, which means our magnificent territory, and it's the territory of the Huron-Wendat Nation, which was defined by the Treaty Huron-Britannique in 1760. So in 2008, there was the Office of the Nyoensio that was created, and it's an office that is within the Council of the Huron-Wendat Nation. And the objective was to highlight the fundamental rights of the nation, in addition to develop the expertise and the knowledge relative to the land. So it started quite small, so about 6 people, but it increased quite a lot in the recent year, and we are now more than 50 employees, and it's quite diverse. We have historian, land planner, archaeologists, biologists. So I think it brings kind of the Western science, but also the traditional knowledge, giving the two-eye seeing vision, which is important. And that I learned is a concept from the Mi'kmaq. I learned that today. And yeah, I think that the creation of the office definitely helped to structure how we manage and assess the territory, and it gave the tools to carry a project like Yanyahonde. So Yanyahonde is the one that worked for where the medicinal plants are gathered. It is located northwest from Wendake, and Wendake is about like in the middle of the Nyowensiu. And yeah, the area is about a bit around like 800 kilometers square, which will make it one of the biggest protected area in southern Quebec. And there are multiple stakeholders on the territory, including different watershed organizations, municipalities, forest companies, as well as CEPAC, and also controlled harvesting areas. So there are a lot of people that have like kind of different interests on the land. Yeah, and what was kind of the spark that that started like the project? So there was a knowledge about the cultural, actually biocultural heritage of the area, and yeah, so there was an historical and there's still a current occupation of the land. So when that go there to practice traditional activities such as hunting, gathering, fishing. And since there were a lot of other stakeholders, the community felt that the Wendat vision of how the land should be managed was not really well taken into consideration, and that the cultural and natural heritage was kind of threatened by notably the forest industry. So that's kind of what created the idea of doing a protected area. So the work started, notably by some knowledge development. So it was mainly historical and anthropological research at first in order to understand like how the land was used. So there were notably interviews with elder, also some old notebook of trappers that were going on the land. So this allowed to define some kind of hotspot of biocultural interest. And yeah, that led to some archaeological research. So we're able to kind of determine areas with high potential value for archaeological research. And there were some kind of incredible discoveries. There were some portage trails that were found, vestige remains of an old cabin from Wendat trapper, and also rock art. But even though those arguments were kind of sufficient to create a protected area for the nation, it didn't really speak the language of the conservation in the government. So we had to do also research, but with a focus more on the ecological value of the land. And a big component of it was the presence of an intact forest landscape, which is a mosaic of like forest ecosystems that has not been disturbed by human activity. And it's actually the last one in southern Quebec, which makes it highly valuable. So it's kind of an ecological witness of what the landscape could have been without the human activity. In addition of that, there was also wildlife monitoring, including bird surveys, and also we used some camera. The moose populations were also kind of followed since it's a species of interest for the nation. There was botanical surveys, a project with lichen and soil microorganisms to use as indicator of the ecological continuity of the land. And also the water bodies were surveyed and studied for the water quality, the habitat quality for the fish, comparing the more exploited one in the south and the more isolated one in the intact forest landscape. So this is a huge amount of work that the nation had to put through. And I just wanted to highlight some other steps that happened since it was kind of a long journey. So in 2016, it was the first submission to get the protected area status, and it was to get a status of polyvalent protected area. However, this status was discarded, so was the project. And in the meantime, there was still logging happening on the land and threatening the intact forest landscape. So that was kind of concerning for the nation, and there was a media release which led to a moratorium on logging. And the year after, in 2018. The year after, so in 2019, there was the first funds by the federal, which means that all of the work prior to that were totally funded by the nation. But in 2019, it definitely helped to have external fund, and it helped to create a lot of the project that I mentioned earlier. In 2021, there was the official announcement that Yanyahonde will be a protected area, so it's a pilot project, and it will be associated with a new status that I will explain on the next slide. But even though that announcement was kind of a good news, it was still kind of, the process was still kind of long and not really developing, so the nation continued to work and created a youth camp on the protected area, Yayana, which means summer camp. And it brings teenagers that are Wendat, but also non-Indigenous teenagers from the region of Quebec to kind of merge different perspectives. And we induced a lot of Wendat culture in it and natural science. And the goal is to connect them to the land. And we just had the 3rd edition this summer. And this year, there was some big steps that happened. So a big area, so most of the intact forest landscape is now officially protected by the law. So it's about 380 kilometers square. And also there was the official launch of the consultative committee that happened this year. So the status of the protected area is a protected area with sustainable use. So it's a new status by the government of Quebec, and it corresponds to a category 6 under the IUCN list. So there are 2 pilot projects in Quebec, the other being in Anticosti, and we can define it as one area that have kind of strong conservation measures. And in our case, it will be the intact forest landscape and also some hotspot for biocultural conservation. And this have to cover more than 50% of the whole area. And the rest, they can have exemplary use of the resources. So for Yanyahonde, it's mostly forestry, but we want a forestry that is not industrial. So it's more like maybe a forestry of like restoration or adaptation for climate change. So the exact guidelines of this status are not really well defined yet, but we are working with the government in order to have kind of clear guidelines for Yanyahonde specifically, in order to continue like the traditional activities and to have like a good collaboration with the other stakeholders on the territory. So yeah, there's a lot of like consultation that have been done and that is still ongoing concerning this project. So we did community consultation in Wendake, but also in other areas in Quebec where Wendat are present, because we still want to bring and kind of meet the needs of the community. Also, we did, the nation initiated consultative tables. So because it was kind of long following the official announcement of the status and nothing were really advancing, the nation initiated tables with the other stakeholders of the territory, so like the municipalities, the controlled harvesting area, CEPAC, and also IDDP and QL, and like researcher. So it's about like 20 people around the table that works together in order to define how will be the protected area. So we had 2 of those tables, and then there was the official committee that happened this year. So in total, we had like kind of 4 meetings, and we'll continue. And the official committee is co-chair. It's kind of a co-chair with the nation and the government of Quebec. 1 minute? Okay, I'm almost done. So the next step. So we'll continue the research and development on the area. We notably have a project with like how we can define an exemplary forestry. We also want to continue the archaeological research. We'll continue the consultation at different levels, so within the community, but also with like the community. Will help to define the new status of the protected area. And yeah, like the nation, even though it's a lot of like collaborative effort, and sometimes, how can I say that? Like, I mean, like, often like the different stakeholders can have like different way of interacting with the land, and it can be a bit challenging to do like this collaboration effort. But at the end, the project still will still be Indigenous-led, and we have to like remember that at the end we all kind of have to share this love for the land and think about the next generation in order to create something that will last, and yeah, and hopefully we want to achieve that by 2026. So, Tia Wankinen, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Et je voulais juste terminer en remerciant l'équipe du bureau d'Union NCO, dont Stéphanie qui est là, Laurie aussi qui est sur le comité, et les anciennes coordonnatrices, donc Béatrice qui travaille beaucoup sur ce projet, et Clara qui est pas là. Merci.
So we've had 4 wonderful presentations. We've got a little bit of time for questions, and I want to open it directly to the audience. So who will be the first brave person to raise their hand? Right here. Miguel.
Thank you first for
Miguel,
sharing.
why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Okay, yes. Miquel Rafa, I come from Barcelona in Spain. First of all, thank you for sharing your experience. And in view of that, I would like to ask you a question that I think everybody is worried, is about the climate change. How do you integrate these changes in the landscape and in the natural systems according with your knowledge, your traditional knowledge? Because it's something new. There are things that nobody knows exactly how to deal. So I would like to know a little bit about your answer to this. Thank you.
I think it's on.
Okay, there you go. Thank you for the question. We did a lot of evaluation on what potential climate projections could look like in our territory. Some of them I think were successful, but the last summer we were one of the Indigenous nations in Quebec that was completely devastated by the forest fires. We had a lot of very active, very intense forest fires. Although we try to incorporate these kind of projections into our modeling, it is a challenge. You don't know how to accurately calculate climate. We did see the impact in the territory in really trying to reflect where are measurements in line with what is happening with climate. And I think for us, it really pushed us to understand the significance of really pursuing the implementation process, really concretely, looking at water, looking at forestry, looking at the regeneration of what these fires is going to create in our territory as well. I mean, as much as fire was devastating for us, it is also something that's going to impact us in ensuring that regeneration process is there, will create a new form of living landscape. We are also monitoring ice in our territory. We do have a coastal still an MCA project. We are looking at National Marine Conservation Area, but we have been doing a lot of ice monitoring and seeing how has the evolution of weather patterns affected our relationship with the territory. So it is something that I can say we are actively studying. We are seeing the impact. And I think providing that information and data to government as a mechanism for them to evaluate how they are funding and conserving these areas is really critical. And we do that in partnership, not just our nation, but we do it in partnership with our neighboring nations. We have to remember that there's connectivity across different Indigenous landscapes, and protecting that connectivity is really based on pursuing relationships with other nations. For us, that is a critical component in how we want to fight climate, by working together, not just protecting our one little landscape, but ensuring that we're pushing and pressing protection for other nations as well.
Well, we've done, in our area, we are working on shoreline restoration and protection, because we're on the coast, and so we primarily are dealing with floods and high winds that are eroding the land and taking the trees. And so we are working on those things with our partners with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So they have joined with us, and we are sharing our traditional knowledge with the science as well. But we also monitor the activities and the habits of the animals on the land, because they know what's going on and we don't. We can do modeling, in which we are trying to implement that now. It's primarily not been done with tribes. And so now we are looking to NASA and USGS to start to do some modeling for the tribal land in relation to the Chesapeake Bay studies that have been done. But those things can only predict, their prediction models. And so that's all based on science. How do we predict from our traditional standpoint? We have to monitor the animals and see what the animals are doing in relation to the land and the water. And so that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you, panel, answering as well. Right now, we use the elders back home on their stories, on the knowledge they know, and we use Western science. We use a company called Smart Ice. We talk to the elders, and the elders are the board of directors hire an elder to talk about all the dangerous areas or where people shouldn't be going during summer or winter, stuff like that. We got that information, and then we use Smart Ice to monitor that area, take data from that area, and we post it on social media or on a book and in public places for young hunters to be able to know the difference. Because when I was growing up, climate change, there seemed to be no climate change. But in 20 years, it changed. And then 10 years. And now it's every 5 years. So these are some of the things we're teaching our young people, using the elders of their knowledge that climate change is real.
Do you want another question or?
The question is, how
Okay,
are you
yeah.
dealing with and monitoring climate change?
We definitely want to continue like the monitoring of the whole area, and also we're thinking about like kind of finding what are the carbon sink in the area so we can protect them more, and in our like the area that will be a bit more exploited, how we can put a regeneration that will be adapted to the changing climate. So I think we'll definitely take that into consideration, and yeah, always trying to kind of merge the Western science, but also put forward the traditional knowledge.
I just want you to say that, I just want to say that if you check online to some sources, there's some stunning footage about the impact of the forest fires in the north. I know that there's some footage on the New York Times site about what's happened in your territory, and it's really, truly devastating. So this is not only strictly an environmental issue, it's an environmental justice issue. These communities are really being impacted in a very serious way right now. So it's an excellent question. I'm sorry that we're out of time. I think we could spend another 5 hours here having this conversation. But I just want to say what a privilege it has been for all of us in the audience to have the four of you here with us today. Thank you so much. Still here? Yes. Amanda, can you tell people, please, where lunch is?
It's where breakfast was this morning, at the hotel.
Okay, so we have an hour for lunch. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you back in about an hour. Thank you.